Marvel is lying to you. The truth about Phase 4 will leave you speechless. Why are fans abandoning the MCU? The answer is hiding in plain sight, and it's not what you expect. Watch till the end because the last revelation will make you question everything. Miss this, and you'll never understand why Endgame was the beginning of the end. When Avengers Endgame blazed onto the screen in 2019, it wasn't just a movie. It was the culmination of a cinematic odyssey. Assemble, they whispered, and suddenly, the entire constellation of Marvel's mythic heroes collided in a battle that shook not just a universe, but the very soul of pop culture. Rare is the filmmaker who touches such a living, breathing legend. Rarer still is the studio that must reckon with the aftermath of reaching the summit. For with Endgame, the Marvel Cinematic Universe did not just close a chapter. It eliminated the very foundation it had meticulously built over a decade. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, the brazen, brilliant, and deeply human Iron Man, found his peace, a finality in sacrifice. Chris Evans Steve Rogers, the moral backbone encased in the colors of America, faded into the twilight, leaving behind a whisper of a promise fulfilled. In the silence of their absence, Marvel was left with an empty canvas, a universe unmoored. What came next? A deluge. Freed by Disney Plus' insatiable appetite, Marvel unleashed a torrent. 10 films, 10 serialized miniseries. A flood in less than 3 years. Quantity, undeniably. Quality. Direction. Purpose. Fans looked around, drenched but parched. For amidst the swirling content, something crucial was missing. The old Marvel thrived not just on spectacle, but on growth, human growth. Tony Stark began as a shallow titan of industry, a man drunk on his own invincibility. Yet in the searing darkness of a terrorist cave, shackled and wounded, he met his mortality. "I am Iron Man," he declared, not out of arrogance, but rebirth. Each sequel etched deeper into his soul, chiseling selfishness into sacrifice, indulgence into legacy. The man who once sold weapons would later cradle the world's last hope in trembling fingers and let go. Steve Rogers? He was Iron Man's mirror, inverted and pure. A frail patriot who didn't seek glory, only the chance to stand alongside the brave. Reforged in the fires of the super soldier program, Steve didn't gain power. He merely gained the means to amplify his courage. And when destiny demanded it, he offered up himself without hesitation, plunging into icy oblivion for a cause larger than himself. Later, thawed and tempered, he rose as the heart of the Avengers, the immovable pillar of principle. But when these titans departed the stage, Marvel faced a daunting void. Who could carry the banner? Who could inherit the gravitas? The answer, they posited, lay in Sam Wilson, the Falcon, once merely Steve's loyal wingman, a character more silhouette than substance. A soldier with a haunted past, Sam knew loss intimately, but audiences knew little of him beyond his place at Cap's side. Endgame's final gift was Steve bequeathing his shield to Sam, a gesture heavy with meaning but light on context. Could a former sidekick, however noble, truly ascend to the symbol Steve had embodied? Marvel sought to answer this question through The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a series that promised revelation. In Louisiana's humid embrace, Sam's roots were laid bare, his family, his struggles, his doubts. Yet the narrative wavered. Rather than forging Sam's identity, the series too often clung to Steve's shadow. Every conversation circled back to the man who once bore the shield. Steve the ideal, Steve the legend, Steve the unreachable. Even as Sam wrestled with the burden of legacy, the arc lacked the crucible moment. That fiery trial where a hero is broken, rebuilt, reborn. Tony had his cave. Steve had his sacrifice. Sam had conversations, reflections, and then almost casually, acceptance. There was no cataclysmic choice, no primal scream into the void, only a nod to duty and the dawning of a mantle. In the end, Sam's ascension to Captain America felt more like the closing of an administrative file than the awakening of a new era. It was as if he accepted the shield not because he had fought through his own darkness, but because at long last, someone had to. Throughout The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Sam Wilson should have stood tall at the center of his own story, but instead he often hovered at the margins, a side character in the very series meant to coronate him. And as Marvel's grand tapestry expanded after Endgame, a flood of new faces rushed in. Shang-Chi, the Eternals, the Marvels. More characters, more titles, more content. But strangely, the emotional weight that once anchored the MCU seemed to evaporate. The old magic was simple yet potent. Fewer heroes, more depth. Marvel once constructed its empire on the backs of 6 distinct titans, the original Avengers, whose arcs intertwined and matured over a decade. Their battles weren't just against villains, but against each other, against themselves, against the looming shadow of sacrifice. It was a world small enough to feel personal, large enough to feel epic. Actors like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans didn't just don costumes. They lived these roles, breathing life into Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. And under Kevin Feige's orchestration, their on-screen chemistry was electric. These weren't mere alliances, they were complicated, bruising relationships forged in fire and betrayal, loyalty and loss. They fought side by side, bled for each other, doubted each other. They saved each other. Now, the landscape is unrecognizable. Heroes scatter like stardust across the galaxy. There is no Iron Man to lead them with grim defiance, no Captain America to bind them with quiet conviction. The heroes are plentiful, yet the soul feels missing. It's not for lack of compelling characters. Shang-Chi burst onto the scene with his fists and his haunted lineage. His journey from a runaway son to a man standing tall against his father's darkness was intimate, textured, a rare gem in Marvel's glittering vault. No Spider-Man swinging into frame, no Doctor Strange cracking portals open, no bridge between Shang-Chi's battles and the larger war. This was once Marvel's secret weapon interconnection. Through phases 1 to 3, every hero was a thread in a vast, intricate web. Crossovers weren't cheap fan service, they were earned collisions. Iron Man and Captain America were the prime example. From their first encounter, sparks flew. Tony, cocky and brilliant, saw no need for limits. Steve, principled and steadfast, demanded a higher standard. Their friction wasn't just dialogue, it was story. It was the slow erosion of trust that culminated in the earth-shattering fracture of civil war. They weren't cardboard cutouts exchanging witty lines. They were two men whose convictions were destined to clash. Moments like Tony holding a dying Spider-Man, whispering apologies he could never make right. "I don't want to go." Moments like that didn't just happen. They were built layer upon layer, through years of character growth and shared scars. They were the soul of the MCU. Post-Endgame, that soul feels fractured. New heroes rise, but they stand on lonely islands. Crossovers are minimal, interactions fleeting. Watching these movies now feels less like turning pages of an epic novel and more like flipping through disconnected short stories. The audience doesn't see relationships tested or friendships forged in the crucible of conflict. They see isolated journeys, loosely stitched together by branding alone. But the heroes aren't the only ones adrift. Once, the MCU was pulled together by the gravitational force of a villain whose shadow darkened the entire universe. Thanos introduced in a cryptic mid-credits scene, he lingered in the background for years, a promise, a prophecy. Every stone gathered, every whispered threat, every defeated pawn in the game, they all pointed toward the inevitable confrontation. When Thanos finally stepped forward, gauntlet raised, it was not a surprise but a fulfillment of a decade-long dread. Now, in the void Thanos left, the multiverse has birthed Kong, or rather a whisper of him. One movie, Quantumania, and little else. Kong the Conqueror, a name that should chill the bone, currently feels more like an empty threat than an existential crisis. There's no creeping sense of dread, no intricate web of connections leading to him. The Infinity Saga worked because every detail, every stone, every sacrifice was a step toward inevitability. Now, with no clear path, no unifying fear, the MCU feels less like an unfolding saga and more like a sprawling anthology. Without a towering villain to unite the heroes, without tightly woven bonds forged through shared struggle, the universe feels hollow. We no longer believe these characters need each other. They drift untethered, in a cosmos that once thrummed with urgent, interconnected life. And so, fans are left staring at each new Marvel release, asking the same question. Where is this all going? Will there ever be another shattering, tear-drenched farewell like Tony's last stand? Another earth-cracking clash like Steve and Tony's Civil War? Or are we destined to wander this bloated multiverse forever, searching for a reason to care? So, did Marvel really drop the ball after Endgame? Or is there still hope for the MCU? What's the one thing they need to fix to win fans back? Drop your hottest take in the comments. I'll be reading them all. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? The next breakdown is coming, and you won't want to miss it.